Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
This is Jeffrey Mishlove back again with Gary Zukav. Gary, earlier you mentioned that science has nothing to say about the soul, and I question that, frankly. You know, with my background in parapsychology, I think that science can say quite a bit about non-physical reality and the multisensory potentials of the human mind. I wonder if we can get into this a little more.
Yes, let's get into this. The science, as it's currently structured, cannot say anything about non-physical reality because as science is currently structured, it is empirical. It's based upon an empirical foundation. And an empirical foundation means that the validation for what is true and what is not true in science, and we must define this also, but what is true and not true in science in a pragmatic way,
Yeah.
put it that way, depends upon what can be validated empirically. And that means validated by the five senses. In other words, science is the flower. It's the ultimate accomplishment of a species seeking to understand reality from the point of view of the five senses.
Well, one of the exciting things for me is that science has kind of come full circle. One of my mentors, Arthur Young, sometimes says that physics is actually touching the face of God, in a sense. And you yourself have written how physicists are now describing particles like quarks that are not detectable in an empirical sense. They're inferred.
Everything touches the face of God. And science will begin to expand in a beautiful way, like a flower blooming. As our species becomes multisensory, everything that our species produces, all of our economic, social, and political structures, will begin to reflect the energy of the soul and not the energy of the personality. All of our endeavors, individual and collective, will reflect the soul and the perceptions of multisensory humanity. So let us look specifically at science. At the moment, science is empirical, which means it is anchored firmly in five-sensory reality. As our species becomes multisensory, science will become multisensory. In other words, the primary orientation of science will be the exploration of non-physical reality. And this cannot be done without the heart. So the second major shift that will occur in science is a shift from an endeavor which is a product of the mind to an endeavor that is the product of the heart with the assistance of the mind.
I'm glad you brought up the idea of the heart and non-physical reality, because when I think of what is real but non-physical, the first thing that comes to me is love.
Yes, exactly. But there's no place currently for science, in science, for love. But there will be. That's how radically science is going to change. And that's what's exciting to me. Science, for example, we can say several things about science as it will evolve. First of all, it will recognize non-physical reality, and it will explore non-physical reality. Secondly, it will involve the heart in a very fundamental way. There will be changes in methodology. At the moment, for example, the laboratory in which theoretical hypotheses are either confirmed or denied is an area that is isolated from the intrusions of life.
Yes.
In the new science that is emerging, All of life is the laboratory. And your life is the experiment. And you are the experimenter.
Mm-hmm.
There are no intrusions. And the experimenter is an integral part of the experiment, as the latter developments in physics, namely quantum physics, have already begun to suggest.
Yes, we can see these signs of the new science around us everywhere, it seems, if we're willing to look.
Yes, because we are seeing the emergence of multisensory humanity everywhere.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In other words, the basis of science, as well as the basis of economics and politics and government and every human endeavor, will be the same. And that is, spirit is real. Mm-hmm. And we are spirits. We are immortal spirits that are evolving in what our Native American brothers and sisters call earth suits.
Earth suits.
Earth suits.
Yeah. I like that, and I'm glad that you brought up the issue of Native Americans as well, because while our culture seems to have lost this connection with the world of spirit and the world of nature, it seems that indigenous peoples have always managed to maintain a reverence for this facet of our existence.
Yes, they have. The aspect of Native American culture and wisdom that I'm most familiar with is Sioux.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a beautiful story that my Sioux brother, Phil Lane Jr., told me. In it, the Creator has gathered all of creation, and he is asking advice. He says, I want to hide something from the humans until they are ready for it. It is the realization that they create their own reality. And the eagle says, give it to me. I'll take it to the moon. They will never find it there. And the Creator said, no, one day they will go to the moon and they will find it. And by the way, the first words that were spoken when our species set foot on the moon was, the eagle has landed.
Oh, yes.
Then the salmon said, give it to me. I will take it to the bottom of the ocean. I will hide it there. They will never find it. And the Creator said, no, one day they will go to the bottom of the ocean and they will find it. And then the buffalo said, give it to me. I will take it to the middle of the Great Plains and I will bury it there. They will never find it. And the Creator said, no, one day they will cut into the skin of the earth and they will find it even there. And then the bear said, give it to me. I will take it to the mountain. I will hide it in a cave and they will never find it. And the Creator said, no, one day they will even level the mountains and they will find it there. And then Grandmother Mole spoke up. And everyone was quiet, because everyone knows that Grandmother Mole, even though she has no physical eyes, sees with spiritual eyes, because she lives in the breast of Mother Earth herself. And Grandmother Mole said, put it inside of them. And the Creator said, it is done. Hechituyelo. Now we are finding this treasure, this secret. The treasure is not new, but our discovery of it is new. We are creators. To live is to create. To be is to create. We cannot be without creating. Every choice that we make creates consequences. Consequences in the lives of others, and we experience in ourselves those same consequences.
Every choice that we make.
Every choice that we make. And by the way, the choices that you might think are the most important are not always the most important.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in other words, things that might seem trivial at the time can be of enormous consequence.
Yes, they can. Most of us think that decisions such as, where shall I live? With whom shall I partner? What shall I take as a career for my life? Are the most important decisions that we make. Mm-hmm. But from the point of view of the universe, these are not that important. Mm-hmm. Within you, you have already made decisions about who you are, what the universe is, how you will relate to other people, and how you will relate to the universe. And these decisions are creating consequences in your life, moment by moment.
and they may never be obvious in any real external sense.
They are always obvious in an external sense. They are your life. Look around you. That is a reflection of the decisions that you have made currently, and that you have made in the past. Perhaps not in this lifetime, perhaps in lifetimes that preceded this one. But in external reality, the choices that you have made are always obvious. That is how the learning environment of the five senses works. It's like a movie, three-dimensional, full color, Dolby Pro Logic sound, never stopping, always reflecting who we are, and always, at every moment, serving the needs of our souls. Now think about that. If four people come together, it is never the case that three of those people are serving as props while the fourth one learns. Every situation serves everyone involved equally.
Well, wouldn't it?
Isn't that remarkable?
Wouldn't it be the case, Gary, that two people might be living identical lives in the same neighborhood, similar jobs, similar cars, children going to the same schools, similar wives, same names, I don't know, but their relationship to the universe could be very different.
Yes. No one lives an identical life with someone else. There is no end to the richness of this universe. There is no end to the richness of who we are. The parents that you have chosen, the souls with whom you have agreements to interact and are interacting, the struggles that you have in relating to your parents, in relating to your past, in altering the currents. We call them emotions, but they are energy currents that run through us. All of these are unique to you. They are complex, almost beyond description. Your path is labyrinthine, and so is the path of everyone. There's not one soul on this planet, whether it is a person living in Ethiopia, or in Florida, or in Canada, whose life is not as complex and as rich as your own.
Why, just a moment ago, did you refer to emotions as energy currents?
Because that's what they are.
I don't quite understand, though, how you arrive at that idea.
Energy is always flowing through us. It comes in roughly through here and runs through our bodies.
Now, what kind of energy?
Well, that's what we're talking about when we talk about emotions. And let us talk about it in terms of physical light and the examples. Let us use physical light as a metaphor. There is low-frequency light, which has very little energy, and there's high-frequency light that has a great deal of energy. When you feel an emotion such as despair or depression, that is a low-frequency current of energy. It has very little energy. And someone who is in despair or in a depression soaks up energy. We don't like to be around them. We say they soak up my energy. They're black holes. Anger is another current of energy that can flow through you. This is also a low frequency current of energy. There isn't a lot of energy in anger. You're exhausted after you feel angry. A higher frequency current of energy would be contentment. Someone who's content has plenty of energy. If you're doing one thing in your life and you're content, and someone interrupts you and say, Jeffrey, stop this. I have something very important to tell you. You don't mind. You stop. You listen to them because you're quite content.
Right. Although we would traditionally, conventionally think of anger as having more energy than contentment.
Would you? Isn't energy exhausting? Think of it this way. Well, think of joy.
Yeah.
Joy is a very high frequency
Right, right.
current of energy
Yes.
with a great deal of energy content.
Mhm.
Somebody who is joyful has a lot of energy.
See, I traditionally think of these emotions as having to do with the functions of the limbic brain and the biochemical structure, as well as the conceptual structure of the person, not as energy currents.
Of course they have those aspects.
Mhm.
We live in a five-sensory world.
Yeah.
This is our learning environment.
Mhm.
This is our earth school.
Mhm.
So there are physiological correlates to all of these things. And as long as we look only through five sensory eyes, all that we will see will be enzymes, neurotransmitters, synaptic patterns and misfunctions.
Yeah.
We will see past histories. We will see the influence of family, of culture, of neighborhood.
Mhm.
All of these serve the evolution of the soul.
Yeah.
They are not accidental.
But when you talk about the non-physical world
Yeah.
and these energies, you're talking, I think what I hear you saying is these are non-physical energies.
Yes, they are.
Uh-huh.
They are non-physical energies.
Sort of the way the energies of the planets are described in astrology.
Well, I'm not familiar with astrology,
Yeah.
but the highest frequency energy is love.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody is feeling love, they are radiant. People like to be around them
Yeah.
because they are emitting something
Right.
that is quite beautiful. Now, it's not incorrect to say that an emotion has all of the physiological or psychological correlates that you describe,
Mm-hmm.
and that psychology, pharmaceuticology, neuroimmunology have mapped.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, there is more.
Yeah.
All of these disciplines and all of these endeavors are endeavors and disciplines of a five-sensory humanity.
Right.
And now as we move into multi-sensory perception, we can see not only those, we can see what lies behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm a practical person, and when I suggest looking at emotions as energy currents, I do this not only because this is what in fact they are, but also because there's a practical benefit to be obtained from doing this.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the energy currents that are running through you, then you automatically in the process step back, even this far. And this gives you a measure of detachment from that energy current that you could say you are running.
Yeah. It's as if the body is like a musical instrument and you can tune it to these various universal vibrations. Or as you used earlier, the radio receiver, we can tune into the...
Yes, the radio receiver I was talking about then was intuition.
Yes.
But what I'm talking about now is becoming aware of the energy currents that are running through you,
Right.
so that you can make responsible choices, so that when you feel anger, you will begin to know what it feels like. What it feels like in this area, your heart area, which is your fourth chakra. What it feels like here. What it feels like here. Does it constrict your throat? Does it constrict your sexuality? You have 7 chakras.
Yeah.
And as you become aware of the energy currents moving through you, you will become aware of how it affects each of these, or at least the majorly affected areas of your body. And then you can choose, do you like this feeling? If not, you can challenge it.
Right.
And as you challenge it again and again and again, it loses power over you, and you gain power over it.
Now, for the benefit of our viewers, we should step back and talk about the term you just used, chakras, which comes from the Indian yoga system, that are organs of psychic perception, in effect.
Yes, they are organs of psychic perception.
Part of the non-physical anatomy of the soul.
No, not of the soul, of the body. They are more of, you might call them the non-physical substrata of what we see with 5 sensory perception.
Yeah.
But they are as real as veins and arteries and organs. And the point I want to make is simply this, that energy flows through us continually.
Yeah.
And as we become aware of it, we can choose. We can choose to challenge an energy current that we recognizes anger, or jealousy, or anxiety, or a sense of vulnerability. And this does not mean that the first time you challenge your anger, it disappears like that. Do you think authentic power can be had so easily?
No, in fact, there's a big movement in psychology today that people are repressing their anger too much. They need to learn to express their anger.
If they express their anger and they act in anger, they will create consequences that carry the energy of anger.
Mm-hmm.
They will create consequences in others, and they will experience those painful consequences themselves.
Mm-hmm.
The pure expression of anger is not necessarily healthy or helpful. I am not suggesting repression in any way,
Mm-hmm.
or suppression.
Mm-hmm.
I am suggesting that you become aware of what you feel, that you set your sights to do that, that you set the intention to become aware of these energy currents, so that when you're driving on the freeway, for example, you can become aware of when you have a negative thought, when you have an angry thought, when you're interacting, when you become insecure. And as you become aware of these, you become aware of them as energy currents moving through you. This allows you to detach a bit from them, to watch them in action. And as you do this, you can begin to recognize these different parts of your personality. This is how you find the splintered parts of your personality. The force field, you can only encounter the force field of your own soul through emotions. This is the human passage in a word.
Why emotions? Why not thought?
You cannot find your soul with your mind. You must use your heart. You must use your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You must know what you are feeling. If you don't know what you are feeling, you will create unconsciously. If you are unconscious of an aspect of yourself, if it operates outside your field of awareness, that aspect has power over you. And we create at each moment. The question is not, shall we create? The question is, shall we create consciously or unconsciously? We have been creating unconsciously. Our evolution has been very slow. An angry person, for example, will encounter other angry people. And at first she might say, well, that's just his fault. He's had a bad day today. And then she encounters another angry person, and she says to herself, he's off balance, he's not emotionally well. And then continues to make excuses for all the angry people that she encounters in her life, until eventually she realizes that the source of all this unpleasantness is not these other people, but the dynamic of anger that she herself carries. And when she realizes that, she will change completely and thoroughly. That time will come when her life becomes so painful that she says, enough, enough. I will not have this anymore. And when she changes in this way, her life will change, because her creations will no longer carry the energy of anger. She will still experience all that she has created up to that moment. Energy is energy. Karma is karma. But yet she will create differently. And because of the law of attraction, which means simply that birds of a feather do flock together. Not only in metaphorical terms, but in terms of real energy dynamics. Angry people attract angry people and live in an angry world. And this validates their opinion that the world is angry.
But you're suggesting that we're at a turning point in human history with regard to these issues, that as we become multi-sensory beings, that anger is, we're learning how to dissipate it.
We are learning to become aware of ourselves as immortal souls. We still have the ability to choose to be angry. We still have the ability to choose to indulge in that old familiar pattern, in this case, of anger, and to create with anger. But we are being given the opportunity to choose again, to choose differently.
To see the consequences of our actions.
Yes.
Isn't that a lot of what you mean by multi-sensory, is that we can actually envision the consequences of our actions, even our subtle actions?
To a certain extent. A five-sensory human can envision the consequences of action. Although a 5th-century human thinks that those consequences only reach out into the physical world. In fact, they reach far beyond the physical world.
Mm-hmm.
We are souls. That means that the majority of us lives in non-physical reality, interacts in non-physical reality, affects non-physical reality, and is affected by non-physical reality. The part of you that is here now in this studio and in 5th-century reality that is serving as a soul that is helping to bring knowledge and wisdom and goodness into the world is a very small part of a larger dynamic that is also you and that is operating in other dimensions.
Mm-hmm. Can you define a little more what you mean by non-physical reality?
Yes. Non-physical reality is our home. We came from non-physical reality, and we will return to non-physical reality when we die. When this personality, body, and intuitional structure, which perfectly suit the evolution of our soul, for this time in the earth school passes,
Mm-hmm.
we will return home. We will come back into the waiting arms and loving arms of our non-physical guides and teachers.